Kundalini is pure illumination. Once awakened, it is important. She's the speech of God in a certain way. The creative. You have to learn to listen to her as she moves through you. Please don't get restricted in your thinking that think the Kundalini is only the energy you feel going up and down the spine, or the pressure or the zinging quality movement. She exists at infinite levels and infinite forms. It could be said that each micron of thought is a complete form of Kundalini. And she flows with absolute unabated fluidity and unreasonable intensity through all levels of consciousness. The quality of understanding is completely beyond. She lies completely beyond. She is a force that is something quite incredible. But she can be seen as cause and effect. And the effect of her moving through the systems of your being, in the human form, the biological system, the energy system, the mental, all the matrices of psychology, emotions, etc., the higher apparatus of consciousness, the Atman, the soul. When you can get the whole thing happening on the same impulse, you hit an indescribable condition known as totality, where the arising of suchness is the thing itself, and you're a hair away from collapsing the objective identity and appearing as yourself. The movement of illumination in the face of the almost impossible grasping for the ineffable quality of recognition. You start here and say, recognize that you are the self. Right, it doesn't work that way. But if you awaken the Kundalini and it arises and you get the illuminating effect, the building of the electromagnetic field of force, which attracts consciousness, deepens consciousness, and actually begins to evolve the form, to awaken the form. A person can go from a completely dull, dormant awareness, completely lost in illusion, to a very evolved perceiver very quickly, because the Kundalini is switching all the systems on. Oftentimes the struggle in what you people are just getting a handle on, you're having the darshan of, is when these systems get clicked on, the apparentness that they bring your consciousness into contact with is a deeper form of truth. And so everything that you currently think has to go, because anything that you think is obviously just thought. One thought is as good as another in most cases, unless your thought flows along principles of truth. This is what yoga is good for. It's a systematic science of thought and action and method, whereby consciousness and activity can flow along genuine principles of truth as they appear in the human form as such. Because of course it's conditioned reality. You were conditioned by the form we occupy. The way we perceive reality has nothing to do with the way other forms of life perceive reality. But because we are a powerful life form, we can produce a reality. And we have. It has momentum. Yoga, as we know it, is the flow of thought dovetailed with the principles of truth, which are as good as they get up to a point. It's like the thorn that you use to remove the thorn. It's a system of thought. It is a system of method. But after a certain point, the suchness of the self must arise and must appear, and we must be willing to let go of the method, let go of the technique, let go of the way of seeing that any conditioning series of principles of view eventually crease. That was a grammatical nightmare, but I think you understood what also to be considered is that consciousness, for it to mature, for it to do the evolution thing, almost always, except in the cases of very, very advanced consciousness, requires a body, a form to rest in, to condition the absolute flow of 360 holographic information that occurs to the soul when it is not housed in a form. That's why we all seek to have a body, because it regulates how we contact consciousness. Because our awareness is constantly seeking a more and more complete expression of contact with the great absolute. We're constantly seeking more and more evolved forms that have the capability of conditioning the absolute, an inexplicable expression of consciousness that is eternity. And the personal expression of I am. So that's why you get the evolutionary thrust of ever more complex forms of life that are capable of more complex forms of perception. The human form, on the ladder of forms, is said to be in the category of a final form, in as much as it is capable, as it is built, of experiencing the self directly without the loss of the human form. In other words, the human form, as it is built right now, as you're sitting there, has potentially the capability of experiencing the self directly. In other words, that vibratory level of awareness that is beyond any list of qualities can be experienced with the apparatus of awareness that you have within your grasp. That makes it an evolutionary final point, which begins the involutionary process of tracking across the internal terrain. Once you have a form that's capable of such a maneuver, then the actual involutionary process of going from achieving an external form that is capable of the experience, then you have to track back across the internal terrain of consciousness with the conditioning of the form in mind to get back to the point of union with the self. This is what yoga does. This is what yoga is, pure and simple. It's a system of ways to do it, ways to think to produce that effect.